After years away, working in another city, I finally planned to visit my hometown. Looking forward to meeting and greeting my old friends, and visiting familiar places. As I was driving along with my girlfriend Sarah, the familiar sights and sounds of the town gave me a sense of nostalgia. Then I finally pulled up to my parents' house. I could see the joy in their eyes as they welcomed Sarah and me back with open arms. We spent the afternoon just chilling, with my mother insisting on eating more and my father sharing old stories that made us all laugh. As the sun began to set, I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood with Sarah to relive my childhood memories and see what had changed. While walking down the street, I spotted a familiar figure walking towards me. As I looked closely, I got to know that it was Alex, my childhood best friend. We hadn't seen each other in years, but when we met, I got to know that the bond was still there. We spent some time catching up, talking about our childhood adventures, and sharing updates on our lives. Alex mentioned that he was heading to a party that night at his parents' cabin, which was situated deep in the forest. He invited Sarah and me to join, saying it would be just like old times, with a bunch of friends getting together. Sarah and I exchanged glances, and I knew that she was tempted by this plan. It felt exciting to think about spending the evening with old friends, so we agreed to it right away. The evening started well enough with laughter, music, and the welcome notes of old friends. However, as the night wore on, everything began to get boring. Sarah and I were not comfortable with everything that started after midnight. We thought of seeking a different kind of adventure. I remembered that, before we left for our hometown, I kept the camping gear in the trunk of the car just in case we had to use it, and it was still in it. A sudden idea popped up that we should find another place, in the forest, and camp for the night in nature. It seemed perfect for such a moment, so we decided to leave the party and camp nearby, eager to enjoy the peace and solitude of the forest under the stars. As we walked a short distance from the cabin to get back to our car, Sarah saw a large tree off the track. As we got near it, we saw a cluster of large and unusual eggs that were hidden in the bushes under that same large tree. Despite their strange appearance, we didn't think much of it and began to make jokes out of the situation. During all of it, we did not notice that I accidentally stepped on one of the eggs and crushed it under my foot. The sticky, foul-smelling liquid that oozed out of it made us both vomit. We thought of just leaving it there and getting back to the car, unaware of the grave mistake we had just made. We had no idea that these were not ordinary eggs, but they belonged to something that was gonna make our lives a living hell after some time. Our act of negligence had awakened a silent terror that began to stalk and hunt us. Anyhow, we got into our car and Sarah was driving. After a few minutes, we got to a point from where we entered the smaller roads that led us to the camping site in that forest. When we arrived at that camping site, it was already very late at night. The site was a clearing just up a small hill, about 15 meters in diameter, surrounded by thick woods on every side, including where we entered from. From now on, everything was about to change. In the beginning, we remained unaware of the nightmare that was closing in on us. Our only thoughts were of the beautiful forest, the campfire we would soon light, and the cozy night ahead of us. A gateway was about to turn into a nightmare. We first heard it when we were setting up the tent. It was a thick and deliberate scream of an animal that was in a good deal of pain. Sarah muttered, "What the hell?" The sound continued until it ended as abruptly as it started. I couldn't tell Sarah what it was, and I thought it must be a deer or something. Then we ignored it and started to set up the tent. After the tent was set up, Sarah suggested we better get ready and get this firewood started before it's too late. As there was no existing fire pit, we had to kind of make one. I remember that we were just talking when a strange noise came from overhead. Both of us turned and it was gone in an instant. It sounded very strange, as if a large bird flew over us, just like the flapping sound of big wings. We both heard it and immediately looked up and around the area, though we could not see the thing that made the sound. We didn't know what it was, and all we could tell was that this was something very large and big. Somehow we ignored it, and after that, we were able to get a proper fire going. We were stereotypically toasting marshmallows that we had in our car over the flame while casually flirting and telling ghost stories. As I was eating marshmallows, Sarah and I once again heard that scream. This time it was much closer than before. The noise echoed so badly that I had to cover my ears with my hands to ease the pain. It lasted longer this time too, going for about 5 or 6 seconds. "What is that?" Sarah stood up, yelling as if trying to ask whatever made the scream. To be honest, I was more annoyed than scared because of that scream. At that point, I joked about it and it dissolved the tension quickly, and we went back to toasting our marshmallows, watching the sky dissolve from purple into a deep blue ocean. Everything was calm after that until we went to sleep sometime. Then, all of a sudden, I woke up to a loud thud outside, as if something heavy had dropped. I jolted up with fear, but Sarah was still asleep. I whispered to wake her up. "Sarah, wake up. I think something's outside." She couldn't understand what I was saying and she just continued to lie there. So I told her that it was something dangerous. She sat up and asked what the matter was, and I could see with my phone flashlight that she seemed really tired. As she woke up, I took my flashlight and opened the zip of the tent to look outside. "Hello? Anyone out here?" I called as I shined my phone flashlight around the clearing. She watched me from the tent as I walked into the center of the clearing, illuminating the area with the phone. I was about to go back to a tent when, near the edge of the clearing, I spotted something. I squinted, realizing I could barely see, and reached back to grab my glasses and got out of the tent again with Sarah. This might sound strange, but the air felt heavier than it did before. There was also this faint smell of copper in the air. It grew stronger as I went over to that thing near the edge. It was moving strangely. I pointed my light at it and saw something that looked like a young deer. Initially, it appeared to me as if it was sleeping until I saw marks on its back. Deep in its fur were these marks, about 2 feet apart. They were darkened, obviously soaked with blood. Sarah told me that the deer appeared to be picked up by some predatory bird by the types of marking it had on the back. I found this confusing because I couldn't think of a prey bird around here that would be able to lift an animal that heavy off the ground easily. This thing was easily 50 pounds or more. An even stranger thing about it was that the markings were just on the back of the animal. There were no other wounds, so whatever had done this to the deer didn't feed off it at all. It just killed it and left. Sarah wrapped her arm around me and pulled me towards her as she was so scared. I told her that we should get back to the tent and we'll move out as soon as the sun comes up. She nodded slowly, and we both began walking back to the tent. A few footfalls back, though, we heard a twig snapping. Sarah shined the flashlight behind us, and it revealed nothing at first sight. She scanned the tree line, and to my horror, we saw something. The ground slid below our feet from what we saw. Directly in front of us, maybe 20 feet away or so, was a large humanoid figure that looked like a monster. It glared at us with its bright red eyes glowing like orbs, and the size of a tennis ball. I was horrified. Seemingly, that thing was between 8 to 10 feet tall. It was feathered in a deep dark gray coat. It stood staring at us. It didn't seem to have a separate head, but rather its eyes were just plastered on the top of its body, sort of like an owl. Both of us were stunned as we looked at this thing. As we looked towards its feet, they were really crooked, but right in front of it were those strange eggs that we saw earlier along with a broken egg. That creature was growling as if it was angry at us for breaking the egg. It was then that it extended its arms or wings, revealing a very wide wingspan. It seemed to flow from its entire body, much like a moth. Without warning, it screamed at us. The sound we heard was a blood-curdling scream, unbearable thick, and heavy just like an amplified fire alarm. It was exactly like the one that we heard earlier, but it was closer. Sarah collapsed to the forest ground, clutching her ears as I held her. I shined my flashlight at the thing and started screaming for help. I told Sarah to run, and the thing began to crawl like a creepy insect following her in the woods. I tried to save her, but I saw that the crooked creature held Sarah from her neck in its creepy mouth, and the blood was all over her. She couldn't even scream and die it on the spot. I ran towards the car, and within a moment I heard a heavy flapping sound. The creature was following me. As I got into the woods as well, I heard it running behind me, snapping wooden sticks on the ground, and sometimes it even felt like something was running above me, through the trees, as it was evidently heard. I stopped at a point beside a tree, trying to catch my breath. I tried to call my friend, and in the reflection of my phone, I saw some movement right above me. It was the crooked creature, standing at a branch of a tree, looking at me with its red glowing eyes and screaming loud enough to be heard by everyone around. Right at that moment, I heard multiple footsteps coming closer, followed by a gunshot. That creature flapped its wings again and flew after the gunshot. It was my old friend who heard the scream and followed it until they found us. I couldn't bear the loss of my girlfriend that day and blacked out. Everyone took me to the hospital, and when I woke up, everyone told me that Sarah's body was not even found. There were traces of her blood and clothes at different places, but she was nowhere to be seen. The creature took it. Even when we visited the creature's nest that we found near the wooden cabin, we didn't find anything. It was just a large empty nest with nothing in it. Everything about that night ended like a mystery. Since then I've been researching the thing I saw that took my girlfriend's life. Now I can say that based on its behavior and its striking physical form, I'd have to say my best educated guess would be that we encountered the Mothman, a humanoid cryptid that is said to have the body of a moth with glowing red eyes. It is rumored that this creature is commonly seen as a sign before a major calamity or disaster. I still think about that night often, and it still haunts us. Honestly, I don't know if I'd still be alive right now to write this story, but I was lucky.